debt is a crash. So we told everybody debt will go down. What's happened? Debt's gone down. Long end, we told you a TLT, a long end, it continues to go down of long end debt. We told you gold will go up. We've been investors on a sustained basis in gold, particularly gold. First, we told the people don't rush so fast into silver. Silver will go up later and harder, but the gold silver ratio is still a tiny bit high. We need it to technically break down so that it's now we need the mania, but we still stack it as an investment. We're just talking in terms of trading. So we are stacking at an investment and trading. And right now the trade on gold, I'm sitting here and, you know, I'm 6-digit sums up in days. And it's easy money, but that's somebody, you know, a nurse doesn't earn that in 5 years, but who's trading long gold for her? Nobody. And she gets crushed. And it's a sad, sad fact because she's doing something very vocational, very kind. She's just not money educated, or she doesn't have anyone who is in her life. And that's an terrible consequence, because good people that do good things that you need in society, paramedics, nurses, veterinarians, maybe, you know, unfortunately, the big lesson and the learning for everybody in this world is your money, your problem. Find out how the game goddamn works and choose your advisor right, and listen and learn so that you can also tell BS if you're being advised by somebody who's a charlatan. There's no commission paid for me to show here. You're not paying me to be here. I'm glad to be here, by the way. I'm not requiring payment. I'm just saying it's a message that I'm consistently repeating, and I want as many people to hear it, because vocationally, I want to help people, because I need a nurse when I fall off my motorcycle. I need a doctor, I need a vet, and they don't deserve to get crushed by all of this. They don't need to be hurt, and I don't want them hurt. And I want them to watch this material. That's why this is free. You giving it out for free. Thank you. You're playing your part. You're doing God's work. I'm trying to do the same. And my message is simple and clear. And we continue to get endorsed. And as I say, from my newsletter in 2009, at the base of the great financial crisis, when I was talking in a trade room, I was saying how this September and that September are almost the same, but for one key thing. You don't get to do QE 1, 2, and 3, and in COVID, the big COVID splurge spend to the same degree. Borrowing is far harder. The rate required is far higher. And the underwriting for retail, because someone will say, well, the government will lend to each other, they're a crooked bunch, they'll just put the interest rates up. You try borrow to buy a house now without sufficient income, without sufficient deposit, those won't be open. And those days of zero downs in America are going to go away for vets, you know, in the army. Don't worry, we'll get you in, you just make your payment, all of that. There's housing that's being bought out there like that still today, but for specific groups. And I can tell you, it doesn't end well for those people when those assets re-rate downwards and the government can no longer pay their pension and their job at the checkout store is no longer needed because of AI, robotics, immigrants, whatever else they've done, and they can replace paying that wage. And everything is not humane. The AI, the robotics, all of this is anti-humane, and it replaces basic labor. And what happens is, you always represented labor and an income stream. They lived off your work. That's what paid the interest on that exorbitant privilege that the government borrowed from the bankers on with that exorbitant privilege. You were the collateral for that. And now, if a robot can do it almost as well as you and doesn't take days off, doesn't need feeding and housing, they don't need the same amount of labor. You know, the world in their eyes is made up of capital, entrepreneur, and labor. You know, that's how we used to manufacture. That the Industrial Revolution was built on that. You would have rows and rows of people. You still sometimes see it in the old school Chinese factories, all working terrible hours, sitting on top of each other in little desks, each one having to sew a certain amount of things. Well, those kind of factories don't exist anymore, or are being phased out. That kind of human capital of labor is being phased out. You have to find a role for yourself that's not easily replaced. Trust me, I'd rather deal with a person. I'm sick to death with chat bots and everything. So the notion that there won't be any roles is absolutely wrong. I'd rather talk to a fellow human being and know I'm talking to a fellow human being. If you're going to a psychologist or you're going to a doctor, I don't want a perfect grok bot there. That's going to be low-end stuff. That's what you do from home just to get a quick view when it's almost like a search special, a very special search where you can have a bot read out all the most probable criteria. In long term, though, there will be technological advances that if you're not a peasant and you haven't been surfed out, that you probably could tap into technologies that will extend your life, give you incredible quality, detect illnesses before you have them, all sorts of things. Toilets that will check, all your samples that you are leaving in there and detect things long before there are even issues. So technology can be your friend, but in the wrong hands, which it certainly has ended up, and it's been scaled and ended up in statists' hands that are all blackmailable by a death cult. That's the worst place for all your best tech to be set up, because there's not altruistic people out there. And it took me a long time to realize that there's a lot of people that look at you as a useless eater who's taking up space, oxygen, and why are you even afforded an experience called life? But they are, and they're in high places as well.